A progression discussion is built around the concept of deciding what are the next set of important learning outcomes do we need to plan for within the current learning progression. Now, learning progressions are long-term, but when we need to plan, we need for those short-term wins, those short-term learning to happen. And so the first question I would suggest you ask is, what is the most important thing students will need to learn right now within the learning progression? You know, the standards, but more importantly, the skills and knowledge that students will need to show by the end of this current learning cycle that they're progressing along this learning progression. So the next questions, asking yourselves at this point is, do we know where the students are, and do we know where to start at this point? Every student has an important learning past. Learning that it should have occurred to prepare them for the next steps. At the beginning of the school year, it could be information and performance data from previous years. Maybe they're important outs. Or it could be from the previous learning cycle of the team. Either way, there should be some performance data to get you in the right direction. Once you've looked at past performance data, the real question is this enough? Is that data enough to tell you what you need to do? Because if you don't feel it's enough, then you have to ask yourself, do we need to diagnose or have a pretest, or can we just move forward with planning and instruction? If you're planning together and assessing together, your previous learning outcomes from the team should be designed to support moving on with decisions during these types of meetings. Now, if you do decide that a diagnostic or pretest measure is needed, look for tools that provide insight into your specific needs and goals and the skills and knowledge that are part of your targets. Try not to spend time on identifying issues that don't support your intended outcomes. It's going to create unnecessary work by doing that. Just a word of advice on team diagnostic measures. Set guidelines or rules for administering. See, if everybody administers in the same type of environment, it creates better data to work for in deciding on initial steps. If too much or too little support is provided for certain or specific groups that you don't know about, you're not comparing good data to make your next decisions. Now, whether you go with previous data that you've planned for or supplementing it with a pretest, you're going to have some kind of, maybe you should have contingency plans as to what you're going to do for the students that need to be bridged. And that is, not every student is going to be ready to start at the same time with the grade level expectations with a certain learning progression. Intervention can start with the diagnostic data. There's no rule against that. And so having gap closure plans by identifying resources, including site coaches, program personnel, to assist in the support system is going to help. And with any intervention, setting criteria for exit from the intervention is really important. Maybe you will need an additional assessment or some kind of measure to prepare or to make sure that the student has the readiness to move from the intervention. And then there's going to be the contingency for those students that you don't think are going to be able to bridge. And at this point, it's using and leveraging district programs to support and help your team along the way. But set expectations for progress. Identify the additional support they receive, along with any additional or modified work expected from the student. This is where transparency that details this additional support helps everyone understand the expectations for instruction, for support, and the issues the students will have to overcome to bridge any gaps in learning.